Impact of Influence, the tragic story of a powerful South Carolina family and the mysterious deaths that they are linked to. Hi, thanks for being here. I am Matt Harris. Hello, Seton Tucker.
Hello.
We are going to be talking to John Snyder in a moment, our legal analyst. And a little later in the program, we're going to talk to a professor who will shed light on some of the unethical things that he believes Alex Murdaugh's grandfather, Randolph II, known as Buster, did as his time as a solicitor / prosecutor. So there's been a story in the community that says that Alex's great-grandfather, Randolph Sr., the man who started the whole law firm and the whole dynasty, was dying of cancer and allegedly decided to park his car on railroad tracks and wait for a train to take his life, thus guaranteeing the Murdaugh family money. And then you'll hear Professor Blume later talk about Alex's grandfather, Randolph Buster II, who played fast and loose with ethics in the courtroom, putting multiple people on death row. Many of those sentences were overturned due to his courtroom annex. It appeared Alex's granddaddy was a win-at-all-cost prosecutor who blurred the lines, often stepped way over the line to get a conviction. So if you think about this, both Murdaugh patriarchs are held in high esteem in the family and in the area. And the stories of those two men are legendary. Playing fast and loose with the rules was okay to the generations of Murdaugh men, perhaps, who grew up hearing those stories. And the stories were not told as, oh, I can't believe they did that. They were celebrated. So is it any wonder, perhaps, that Alex Murdaugh may have thought bending, breaking, blurring the lines and the rules is just what Murdaugh men did? The two men his family idolized did not suffer for their murky ethics, and so maybe in the beginning, Alex Murdaugh thought, I'll blur the lines a little bit, and I can get away with it. Just some thoughts from me on that. And we are joined again by John Snyder, our legal analyst, former district attorney, former defense attorney, and someone named, I think, Dabo reached out to us, John, and said, that guy needs to be a law professor. That's what he needs to be. So that was one vote for you becoming a professor. You are the professor of this podcast.
Well, I appreciate that, and that would be kind of fun, I think.
Wait, we did have a professor on last time, so we have multiple professors.
We have a professor coming up later on the show. But let's go with first questions first. You may have seen a headline, and you haven't dug into it, folks, and it's about charges being dropped against Alex Murdaugh. What have you seen with that, John?
Well, the state and having kind of multiple counties and multiple agencies looking into the charges charged Murdaugh with 4 counts of something that when they went back and looked at the evidence, there's only evidence of 2 counts of, I think, of obtaining property by false pretenses. So in an effort to make sure they're precise in how they proceed forward in these cases, they've dropped 2 of the 4 charges to make sure that everything lines up with what the factual evidence is showing right now.
So if people see that headline, don't panic. It doesn't mean a lot of charges are about to be dropped. It's still going.
A lot of what I've seen law enforcement doing the last 6 months is just quietly and efficiently building their case. I don't think he's going to get out of a lot at this stage.
Well, I think some of the public outcry was because the first 2 charges, he was denied bond pending a psychiatric evaluation, and then he was denied bond again. And the second set of charges was under a different judge, Lee, and they allowed bond, which was very high, and he's not bonded out as of the time of this podcast. But I think that may have been some of the public outcry.
But it's really nothing to worry about. If you're wanting him locked up, this does not change the story.
That's right. This is in no way an indication or a trend. It's the state cleaning up and tidying up what they believe to be a rock solid case moving forward.
So we also know that PMPED has now changed their name to the Parker Law Firm. There was an article that came out yesterday in the Augusta Chronicle that said, contrary to media reports over the holidays stating that PMPD was splitting up with Randolph Murdaugh IV, branching out to form his own solo practice, that this was not happening. They were remaining as a whole. There was only one partner who was leaving, which was William Barnes, and that apparently was already in the works.
So basically, Randy Murdaugh will still be working there. He'll still be part of the law firm. They just changed the name, right?
That's right. And I think the purpose there is twofold. One is the guys that had nothing to do with this are trying to maintain their ability to practice law and provide for their families. And so by changing the name, it removes kind of any reference to the family, removes any negative implication of involvement with the family, and from a PR standpoint, makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Again,
She's pretty logical.
It's logical.
Well, some of the lawyers actually filed separate limited liability partnerships. So what would be the purpose of that?
So that's actually standard in a multi-partner law firm. Instead of having your partnership be as an individualized interest, it can be set up through a limited liability company. Again, what it is, it's just an insulating factor. So it's basically like Matt Co., Seton Co., and John Co. all are together for Big Co. And so we're all under one company umbrella, but we have our own separate entities that we run our expenses through. We run our cost, our income through. It's a tax structuring and business structuring thing that's common in law firms. The footnote is the history of this family that had such a presence for so many years is being erased in months.
Right.
You've got almost 100 years of dominance in the legal profession there, and because of Alex one son's misdeeds, their whole legacy is being erased.
As of now, only one person is involved. May change. You never know.
Okay, so we also had a report that just came out that said multiple sources close to an ongoing investigation have told Fitz News that physical forensic evidence directly ties Alex Murdaugh to the double homicide. I know you're a former DA, so what are your thoughts on that?
Because of the seriousness of the crime, because of the role that Alex Murdaugh had at the time, as being one of the prosecutors in that county, I think law enforcement's been very deliberative in this investigation, and so every piece of evidence was collected. That takes time to be analyzed, and so his fingerprints would have been everywhere. So then you have to go to the next step to see what related to the gunshot wounds. Were the weapons found at the scene? Those will be analyzed. And, there may even be a confession coming. They are announcing in any way that he was connected. They've got evidence to back that up.
Okay, but they're not announcing it, right? This is a leak. This is not an official word. So this may not be accurate.
Well,
this is just a leak.
Okay. If it's a leak, but if somebody along the chain is saying, there's direct forensic evidence connecting, and legal departments of newspapers felt comfortable running that, it's probably a fairly reliable source. We'll probably hear a lot about that in the next, week and a half.
So I want to talk about a Wall Street Journal article that came out in September that talked about some of the evidence that was found at the scene. They say that there was ammunition known as a .300 Blackout that was found near the scene. And they also say that the family owned an AR-15 style rifle, and that the Blackout .300 ammunition can be used with this type of rifle, but that was not recovered at the scene.
The ammunition or the rifle?
The rifle.
The rifle was not, okay.
And, we know that they were searching the swamps after...
Yeah. The woods and area.
The woods after the deaths of Maggie and Paul. So just kind of found that interesting that maybe it's the rifle.
And this is kind of a little gun education 101. The projectile is the thing that kills someone. The projectile is part of a bullet. When the projectile leaves, a casing comes out. When you're watching a action movie and you see things shooting out of the gun on the side, that's what held the gunpowder and the projectile together. And so those casings were found at the house, but the gun that shot them has not been found. That particular style of ammunition can be used in different types of weapons. So it could be in a pistol, It could also be in a rifle.
And the fact of the matter is, you're at a hunting lodge, and the availability
That's right.
of guns and bullets and various devices along those lines is not anything shocking or surprising, and doesn't really mean anything unless there clearly is a rifle missing, because they're going to be there. We talk to people down there. They walk around in these areas with an AK or an AR on the back of their golf cart or whatever, if they're in a wood, like a place where you might see boar and pig and animals like that. It's not unusual to have one in the back of your truck either.
Guns in a place where people use guns is, be like, we found an empty shell casing in a police department. It's like, well, yes. Right. There's 1,000 reasons that could be.
The reason I say that is because a lot of people I had talked to who aren't from any of these areas, and I'm not, but I've talked to enough people, were like, but who would have an AR or an AK? But that is very common in that area.
That's right. And it's not because everybody's like strapped going to the grocery store. Mm-mm. There's a lot of people that hunt wild hogs down there, and some people use a pistol to hunt with them, and some use a rifle. And the rifle can be, what you think of as like your granddaddy's .22, or it could be one of the ARs that again is just, it's just a rifle that's got, different detailing on the outside, but it functions just the same as the old bolt action rifle that your grandfather might have had.
A good example I want to give about this is I was doing this national TV interview, and the interviewer, and we'll call that person out, was like, well, why would Paul, for instance, or Maggie walk from their house to the kennels with a gun? The person was implying, that it wouldn't make sense for that person to have a gun. They're just walking. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I think that's possible around there. And the guy who was giving me a ride to and from like the little set, he is from there. And he's like, we have them constantly on our little vehicles that we take from one place to another. He said, it's not unusual if you are walking a distance out, even just to a dog kennel, that there might be one sitting there leaning against a tree or something. And I'm not saying this thing is right, but that is just a true fact.
Yeah. While it doesn't seem normal to people that don't live in that area or don't hunt, when I go hunting, you keep your gun with you.
And even if you're not hunting, you're just, you are walking in land where there's hunting, like in this case.
I, like everyone else, is very curious to see what this evidence linking Alec is. I can't wait to find out. And also if he will, in fact, be arrested shortly.
You would think that if they blew his alibi apart, that would be enough to have some serious questioning and thing, but we don't know.
So do you find it strange, John, that it's been 7 months since this happened? Like, if they did have evidence linking Alec, wouldn't it have happened sooner?
No, you want your people who are charged with murder to not be randomly charged with murder. There are a million podcasts out there about cases where the people claim they were wrongly accused. And so we want prosecutors and police departments to take their time to gather evidence to make sure that when they decide to charge somebody with a serious crime, that they have the evidence to support it. And so while we live in this instant age and we want instant justice, it is way better to let the process work, to methodically go through and say, okay, we're at a double homicide at a hunting lodge where there's, there might be thousands of empty shell casings within, 800 yards of the house where the bodies were found. Right. So you want them to go very slow and not just charge somebody for murder on almost no evidence, because that ruins people's lives if they didn't do anything wrong. And so I think it's actually a show of restraint. That's one. The second issue is we have people that are part of the system that were involved. And so there may have been some obstruction. There may have been some evidence, hiding, so there's some other things that may have made it harder for investigators to bring about a charge quickly. I prefer states and investigating agencies to take their time to do it right. I can tell you as a foreign prosecutor, there's nothing worse than having to dismiss a murder case because the victims don't feel any less grief. If there's some issue with the evidence, you're letting that family down.
There was a question off of the Murdaugh Podcast Facebook page, which is our page. We hope you'll go to. And Nancy asked about attorney's fees. And if they settle and the people who should have been receiving their $1 million, say, don't receive their $1 million, but let's say Alec or some other person in the firm received a percentage, will they keep their percentage? Even if they, so in other words, they get 700, the person's supposed to get 700,000, they got 300,000, I'm making up numbers. Do they get to keep the 300,000 even though they never gave them the 700,000? And is there an interest built in on the money if it should have gotten there a year ago?
So the very first thing that's happened is there's been an audit of the law firm's finances. So if they see that a $1 million check came in for Mrs. Smith, and then they see that only 100 was paid out to her, 30,000 was kept by the law firm, she's going to get all that $1 million back, plus interest, as you said. And the firm's not going to benefit in any way from the wrongdoing of one of its partners.
All right.
Now, that being said, most of these cases were contingency fee cases. So the aggrieved party that didn't get their settlement probably didn't pay any, actual fees out.
Upfront cost.
So making them whole looks like them getting their whole, settlement award, not money on top of money.
Gotcha.
But they still have claims against the law firm if it appears they either had knowledge or they were negligent in how they were operating their finances.
So on top of the money that they may receive that they were supposed to receive, they may have a malpractice claim as well.
They'll have a separate, so they'll have actually their original claim that should have been settled properly, and then they'll have a new and separate claim against the attorney and his law firm for malfeasance and negligence. So actually, these people that were wronged are probably getting a whole lot more money than they would have initially gotten under a regular settlement with an ethical lawyer involved in their case.
And something we saw, but it was in all the publications, headline type stuff, that Maggie Murdaugh in 2005 wrote a will that turned everything over to Alec, and the executor of the will was supposed to be Maggie's sister, but it was crossed out, and Randolph's name, which is Alec's father, was written in. We think it's a big nothing burger because, of course, you're going to write a will and give it to your spouse. Secondly, Maggie's sister is not disputing that the Murdaughs can handle being the executors. So agreed, nothing burger there, everybody?
One, everybody in their will who's married, the most common first distribution of assets is to your spouse that survives you, then your kids. And so that's totally normal. Naming your sister might be normal, but she might, it could have been that she, the sisters were talking and she's like, I don't have any interest in doing that. And
she actually in her affidavit says that she was never even aware that she was named in the first place.
But there could be something like that, though, where she's like, why am I putting her to do this? She's busy. She's got crap going on.
And her father-in-law is an attorney, so it would make sense she would have someone with legal knowledge to be the person.
There's nothing nefarious on its face with any of this. And even if it was part of Alex's further strategy of trying to get and control money, that would have backfired anyway because the father died 3 days later. So whoever the secondary person named in the will would have stepped in anyway.
John, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
See you, John. John Snyder, everybody.
Looking forward to what we're going to find out here,
hopefully,
evidence-wise, in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, me too.
Hopefully.
Happy New Year's.
Thank you.
All right. Talk to you later.
Going to pause for a moment and talk about Warby Parker. I've used Warby Parker for glasses for a couple of years now, so I'm so happy they're signing on as a sponsor for the podcast. And Seton, I know you love the try.
Yes, this is the first time I tried Warby Parker, and I ordered my 5 pairs for free, and you have 5 days to try them on. There's no obligation to buy, and they ship for free, and they include a prepaid return label, and I love the selection. I found out I have a wide face, and the Daisy Wides were the ones that worked best for me, and my husband complimented me on them, which is not like him to notice my granny readers.
And the glasses start at $95, including prescription lenses. Don't let your FSA or HSA dollars go to waste. Put them to good use on Warby Parker prescription glasses, prescription sunglasses, contact lenses, and eye exams. Try 5 pairs of glasses at home for free at warbyparker.com/Murdaugh. That's warbyparker.com/MURDAUGH. All right, take a break for a moment. Talk about a new concept in glasses, sunglasses, contact lenses, and eye exams. I'm talking about Warby Parker. I've been using them even before they signed on with us. Love the free home try-on program. It's awesome.
Yes, this is the first time I've tried Warby Parker, and you get to order 5 pairs of glasses, try them for free for 5 days, and there's no obligation to buy. They ship for free, including a prepaid return shipping label. Yes, and I took the quiz, and I found out I needed wide. They have everything from extra narrow to extra wide.
Yes, and the quiz helps you, and the selection, amazing. When I show people the Warby Parker app that allows you to do a virtual try-on, they're blown away. And remember, don't let your FSA and HSA dollars go to waste. Put them to good use in Warby Parker prescription glasses, prescription sunglasses, contact lenses, and eye exams.
Glasses start at $95, including prescription lenses.
Warby Parker is committed to providing exceptional vision care online and in stores. Try 5 pair of glasses at home for free at warbyparker.com/Murdaugh. That's warbyparker.com/Murdaugh, MURDAUGH. We're with Professor Blume, John H. Blume, the director of the Cornell Death Penalty Project. He teaches criminal procedure, evidence, and federal appellate practice, supervises the capital punishment and juvenile justice clinics for North Carolinians. Good to know he's a graduate of Chapel Hill, University of North Carolina, executive director of the South Carolina Death Penalty Resource Center, which is a position he held until joining the Cornell Law School faculty, where he is right now co-author of many books, including A Modern Approach to Evidence and Death Penalty Stories. And he's argued 8 cases in the Supreme Court of the U.S. Thank you so much for joining us, Professor Blume.
Sure, happy to do it.
We have been talking about the power of the Murdaugh family over 85 years as solicitors. And with your work in the South Carolina Death Penalty Resource Center, you came across some cases that would be Randolph Murdaugh II, who had put some people on death row, and apparently they shouldn't have been there. Tell me about the first case when you came in contact with what Randolph Murdaugh II had done.
Well, he was, I think as has been reported by others various times, so he was pretty much a bare-knuckle courtroom fighter in that. And he generally didn't have, I don't think cared, this is my assessment of it, I mean, he never told me this, but I don't think he really cared if a death sentence got reversed on appeal. The most important thing to him was to get it, was to sort of to win the battle in front of it. So many of the cases, or a number of the cases in which he sought and attained the death penalty were reversed by the state Supreme Court, or generally by the South Carolina Supreme Court. And it was almost always for the same reason, what we would refer to as prosecutorial misconduct in closing argument. He would say things that he wasn't supposed to say. He would say things that I think any prosecutor would have known you can't say. And he actually said things, he would make arguments after he would make the same argument even though a prior death sentence had been reversed, because he made the exact same argument again. So and it generally had to do things like one of the famous ones he told the jury in a Beaufort County case was, if you don't give the guy the death penalty here, I'll never seek it against anybody again. If you don't give this guy the death penalty, you might as well put up a billboard at the county line that says, "Come on in, kill our children, rape our women, commit murder here. Nobody
Good
cares."
Lord.
The other one was, which resulted in a reversal, was commenting on the defendant's failure to testify. The defendant didn't take the stand. Doesn't have to testify. It's a clear rule that you don't have to testify. And they can't comment on it. They can't tell the jury to hold it against you. Right. And he was famous for saying things like, you haven't seen this defendant. He's expressed no remorse. He didn't appear. He didn't tell you he was sorry for this, so you should give him the death penalty because he didn't have any remorse. So those are just a couple of the ones that sort of stand out. But it was, again, I think he was, by all accounts, a heck of a courtroom lawyer. But he was also, I don't think really cared about whether it got reversed on appeal or not, as long as he won the battle in front of him.
And when they get reversed on appeal, do you know, were they retried, and how many do you know of?
I will say that he wasn't the most aggressive person in seeking death, so I wouldn't, say that. But I think of the ones that I'll call got reversed. Some of them got sentenced to death again, and some of them were removed from death row. Generally, once a conviction death sentence gets reversed, about 2/3 of the time the person gets removed from death row.
But not necessarily let free. It's just the sentencing part.
No. Usually they're re-sentenced to life in prison.
And the things that he did were obviously very egregious, right? It wouldn't take long to get those appealed. If you have sentences like he was saying about, we're going to put a sign up here and people come rape our women and children, I would imagine it wasn't a battle to get some of those off death row, or was it?
No, I mean, like in one of the cases, the case we're talking about here, and where he said, "I'll never seek the death penalty again." In the opinion reversing that, the state Supreme Court basically said, look, he should have known better. We reversed a case 20 years ago where he said exactly the same thing. Wow.
How did he never get censored or taken off being a prosecutor?
I think people are very reluctant to file sort of bar complaints or ethics complaints against powerful people. Against prosecutors in general and powerful people, especially powerful ones. And I don't think there was any question that was an extremely powerful and influential family for many, many years.
What decade are we talking about, or what years was this happening?
This is mostly in the 60s and 70s and 80s.
Is this one of the most egregious or largest sample size of someone you've heard of putting people on death row?
No, I wouldn't say that. I mean, like I said, he didn't seek it as much as some other people, some of these other prosecutors that are kind of famous around South Carolina, Donnie Myers in Lexington County, and some of the others. But, I think that almost every case, I'd have to go back and look, but I'm pretty sure it's true, that I think every case in which he got the death penalty was reversed at least once on appeal.
Jeez. So how about the state of South Carolina? You worked here. How's the state match up against other states in pushing the death penalty and reverses?
Well, South Carolina is, because it's small, it doesn't have like the sheer numbers that a jurisdiction like Texas or Florida or something like that would because of its size. But it's about, I think, sixth overall if death sentences in relationship to the number of murders. If you think about how many homicides, how many people get sentenced to death. And I think South Carolina is sixth nationally if you do that. And then the reversal rate on appeal overall historically from 1976 to the present has been approximately 60%.
Wow, that's pretty high.
What's the top state?
Percentage-wise.
Alabama.
Oh,
wow.
I've lived in both of those states, so.
Watch your step. What is, overall speaking, I've heard this before, and tell me if I made this up or if it's true, that the prosecutor's job is to get to the truth, and the defense attorney's job is to make sure his client gets a fair trial. And sometimes that gets mixed up. Do you think that's a true statement?
Well, I mean, there's a famous quote from a Supreme Court decision called Berger versus United States, where they say the prosecutor's primary responsibility is not to obtain a conviction, but to be a minister of justice. So therefore, at least in theory, they're supposed to be held to a higher standard than a defense lawyer who has an obligation to their client to obtain the best result possible. I think that's in some places is often more aspirational than true.
Yeah, okay.
But it is at least a statement of what the black letter law is.
Professor Blume, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. Keep up the good work.
All right, thank you. Happy to do it.
So after we spoke with Professor Blume, I came across this legal brief where in 1979, there was a car chase between 24-year-old Michael Linder on a motorcycle. He was speeding and he had an expired license. So there was a car chase, and the highway patrolman, Willie Peoples, was shot and killed. Initially, Michael Linder was found guilty and sentenced to death. It said that he had taken some bullets out of the highway patrolman people's gun and placed them to make it look like it was self-defense.
When SLED concluded the spent rounds had been analyzed, and they concluded the 6 shots had been fired from Peoples, the officer's gun, not Linder's gun. And that evidence was not available to Linder, who was sentenced to death, or his attorney. And that should have been obviously available because that proved the whole self-defense thing.
Right. And the prosecutor was Randolph Murdaugh Jr.,
which is Alex Murdaugh's grandfather.
Well, they didn't necessarily say he did anything wrong. They said that there were misleading witnesses.
And the judge's instructions to the jury were not clear. Some of the witnesses did not tell the truth. Now, they did not say that Murdaugh had anything to do with that. Just an interesting note. Before we wrap up, you have a birthday wish?
Yes. So one of my friends, her mother is a huge fan. She's been listening to our podcast all along, and her name is Marianne Long, and she is turning 90 this week. So we wanted to give her a shout out.
Happy birthday! If you want to get a hold of us, comments, thoughts, etc., how do they get us?
You can reach us on Murdaugh Podcast Facebook page or murdaughpodcast.com.
And we will chat soon.